Hello and welcome to the pharmaphorum podcast. This is the live reaction podcast from Frontiers Health. We just wrapped the last session. The networking event is roaring in right next door. And I'm here with web editor Nicole Raleigh.
Hello.
And Frontiers co-host and WTF Health host and founder Jessica DaMassa.
Hi.
And I'm Jonah Comstock, editor-in-chief of Frontiers. We are just going to sort of wrap a little bit. I've got my beer.
Why didn't you get a pretzel, Jonah?
Because we are, of course, in Berlin. And talk about how the 10th Frontiers Health went. We're lucky to have Jessica here, who has been to all 10 of them.
Nine of the 10. Nine of the 10.
If we want to know how the first one went, we'll have to go out and find Roberta.
Yeah, somebody will have to ask him about that one.
So yeah, overall impressions. Because I think between us, we witnessed a good chunk of the event. Yeah, what do we think? How did it go? What were some of the biggest kind of takeaways, most interesting things you heard?
Well, I think this year it just had a lot of energy. And I think after the last couple years in that post-pandemic hangover we were in, I feel like our hangover is over and we have now finally weathered the storm. We've taken our vitamins, we drank our electrolytes. And I think that just the energy, both on stage and I think among the attendees was really high. I don't know if you guys picked up on that, but I felt like there was a lot of buzz always in the hallways and at the networking events. And it just seemed like they're talking about doing deals again. They're talking about where their solutions are integrated. They're talking about solutions they're looking to integrate. Like it just seemed like there was a lot more conversation about what we're going to do and where things are headed. Like we're back to that talk track as opposed to, oh my God, what just happened? Will we be around? And so I think that doom and gloom of the pandemic at least seemed fully shaken off at this version of the event.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this focus on integration really can sort of broaden out for the conference as a whole, where we're talking about looking at harmonization of more sort of global policy, starting with Europe, trying to cross those borders. And the excitement is palpable, as you say, even this year to last year, there's a noticeable uptick in positivity, certainly when it comes to investment. I don't know what you thought, Jonah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd be selling Frontier short to call it a digital health conference, right? Mm-hmm. But it is like, that is in a lot of its DNA, and a lot of the folks who are on that mega panel were, digital health investors, digital health innovators. And it's been a weird few years for digital health, even outside of how it's been a weird few years for everybody, the pandemic, there've been a lot of roadblocks, a lot of failures, a lot of feeling that maybe this like vision is not going to happen. And I feel like, there's new excitement with AI and there's kind of a sense that like, just because some of the business models didn't work, some of the early companies didn't work, doesn't mean that the vision and the dream is dead.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because you say it shouldn't be kind of pigeonholed as a digital health conference. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking, I don't even know if the term digital health even summarizes anymore what we're doing. And Jonah, you'll remember when we were are we in M health? Is it mobile digital health? Yeah. Is it? And I almost wonder if maybe we're at the beginning of the new era of whatever this version, the AI enabled, the algorithm driven, whatever this version of the health tech market is. I almost wonder if we're on the cusp of being in our next name, from mobile to digital to whatever is next.
I think that's exactly right. What people always said was like, well, no, we've gotten there when it's just health, right?
I hate that though. Honestly, I roll my eyes all the time because it's like there's these subcategories for a reason, people, so we know what we're talking about.
But I think with technology, what happens is that it becomes integrated into every aspect, and that's what we want to see. We don't want using an app to do your health to be this like novel, separate thing.
Yeah, but at the same time, I feel like it's important to have right now. I think it's important to have the idea where this digital and where the technology is. So we're kind of keeping track of it, because I don't think we're at the point where it's just seamlessly around us and everything is ambient. Yeah. I don't think we're at that point. So I think making sure that we're just in some way, and maybe not digital health as the moniker anymore, but in some way just carving this portion of the ecosystem of healthcare out as unique and innovative and forward thinking and using technology is different than the kind of technology that's being talked about in health systems or in pharmaceutical companies. They're focused really on like a lot more back end type things or things that are really attached to the EMR.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think this comes to the complexities that arise in pharma as opposed to sort of health. Certainly, AI has brought the lens back to digital technologies, and we are going towards, that unnamed as yet future with it, as you say, Jessica. But I think if we look at this seamlessness you're talking about, where we're not quite there yet, certainly we're not there yet because we need to change so much of the existing infrastructure, and that requires conversations like we're hearing at Frontiers Health, but it also requires action as well. It was said earlier, you can have the great ideas, but you've got to execute them.
I've had so many conversations here. I can't remember like who I was having them with.
Yeah.
But I was talking last night with somebody, and no, it was this morning. It was Ruby Sanga. Now I remember. We were talking about how like some people draw a distinction between strategy and implementation. Oh, I'm a strategy person. I'm an implementation person. But really, if you aren't implementing, then you're kind of a bad strategy person, right? Like, what is the mark of a good strategy if not that it actually happens, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it's really important to stay grounded in that, especially at a conference like this. But I think the nice thing about having done this for 10 years is that at some point you do start to become a little bit accountable to your predictions, right?
Well, yeah, you do get accountable to your predictions, but I don't know about you guys, but I feel like everything old is new again. Like I am at this moment right now, we're sitting at Frontiers 10, and I've been to 9 of the 10 Frontiers, plural. And, one of the threads, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this too, that I feel like has carried through all 9 of the editions of this conference that I have been to is this concept of digital, like it's now digital therapeutic, but like the idea of wrapping some sort of digital component around the pill, or is it in the pill, or is it above the pill, below the pill, but that like digital wraparound idea to partner up an actual physical drug with a digital component has been a through line for this entire conversation, but the conversation has evolved around it. Like we're not talking, it's not novel anymore. And there was a period of time where the concept matured. And then now it's like, it's the next iteration of that where we're actually talking about it being prescribed together. And so I think there's some, and even when it's not, I mean, the best use case right now that I keep hearing is GLP-1s. Well, you have to have the behavior change component. Otherwise, you lose a lot of the efficacy potential of those drugs. And it's like, what are we looking to? Oh, we should have a digital component to wrap around it. It's like, people, we've been talking about this for 10 years now.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting that we're at that point where it's like some of these ideas that we've had, or some of the technology solutions that we've been working on, there is something to be said for what the market conditions are, and maybe a little bit of luck for when you strike it, because this might be the use case that has been looking for, just like in telehealth or mental health became the use case that we were looking for to really prove out that technology's capability.
I think you were going to say the pandemic was the use case.
No, but I mean, it wasn't. But the pandemic was definitely a spark, though. And then we found there that a lot of people obviously needed some help from a mental health standpoint, and that was where it really was like. I remember looking at the telehealth numbers in those years, 2020, 21, and 22, and it was like more investment, more utilization, more and better patient outcomes consistently in broadly that category that was mental health, that was using a virtual or a digital component.
But to go back to digital therapeutics and wraparound apps, I feel like what's really held them back over the years has not been that they don't work, right?
Right.
It's been regulation and reimbursement and business models.
And finding the right use case.
And so I guess one question is like, has there been movement on that? I think stuff like Purdur's, right? Like there's this notion now that of a wraparound app, it's not overly ambitious. It's like it's just like, this is kind of going to be part of how we do pharma. And I actually do think like that we're near a tipping point on that. And I'd love to hear, Nicole, you were at the Digital Policy Summit.
I was.
What were some of the big takeaways from that?
So I just want to go back slightly to what Jessica was saying, and this notion of the conditions creating the environment. Certainly without the pandemic, we wouldn't be at the point we're at with this sort of virtual world that we're able to function in, and that's both within business and our personal lives, as has been discussed at the conference. But alongside that, with the pandemic, also we've seen greatly increased mental health circumstances. The rates have just shot up exponentially. So that goes back to the conditions creating the environment. Going back to the summit, Jonah, sadly, we are still at the point of discussing how necessary that crossing of borders in Europe is for harmonization of policies in order to access the data in different countries, even though they're so close together. And it would be amazing for pushing health very much into the future and helping patients. At the moment, it's still all that bureaucracy. Certainly, we've got great strides being made by Germany with DIGA. France has tried. It's not been quite as successful. We're still not at a sort of point where we can say, yes, this is the way forward. But inroads are being made in even smaller countries like Belgium, although there was a chuckle in the audience when it was discussing its sort of a bundle opportunity. I think the conversations are still necessary, but it is the actions coming out of it that we have to see a little bit more. And it comes back to this word that is spoken about across Frontiers Health, but also other conferences, which is evidence. The problem with digital products is that long-term evidence is yet. And coming back to this drug plus software and then coupling in the complexities of pharma, we have so far to go. And yet now is the moment. I know, I believe it was Jeff Dachis and Stefan Ulrich who said 2026 is perhaps not the time for digital health innovators and pharma to come together, but it will be post 2026. Certainly, Chairman of Frontiers Health, Roberto Araccioni, has said now is the time. You only have to be here to know now is the time.
So I'm glad you brought up Europe and the US. I think partly as a byproduct of this being the first frontiers to sort of with a big Eversana influence on it. And partly just because US policy looms so large over everything right now, there was a lot of conversation about, bringing pharma marketing across borders, digital health across borders, like a lot of talk about how we can sort of unify and harmonize a lot of what pharma does in Europe and what pharma does in the US. And I thought that was an interesting conversation and an interesting kind of focal point for this particular conference.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting to hear your Eversana's new CEO, Mark Therier, talk about his vision for what's ahead, and specifically the value he sees in this direct-to-disease model, of which like Lilly Direct is a perfect example of, where pharma is going direct to the consumer in a way that is digitally enhanced and frictionless and all of that. And the promise that he sees in that model, I think, as being something that is indicative of where things are headed from a healthcare perspective. I thought that was really interesting to hear.
Yeah.
No, it's a great vision. Yeah. DTP squared.
Ooh, is that what the acronym is? Nice.
I mean, Jessica, you and we met in the, like you say, in the mobile health, the M health,
the M health era.
Years. and I feel like for years it was like, when is pharma going to get in the game here?
Yeah.
And so something like DTP, it almost like brings a smile to my face, because it's like pharma's just discovering telehealth for the first time. And welcome to the party.
Welcome,
right?
hello. Yeah, I remember actually, this was a couple years ago. And it was the same exact feeling, Jonah. I was at a different conference, and I won't say what it was, but it was a very large customer, like a CRM, based in San Francisco, that has a big blowout party every year. That's famous. And I was there, and they were showing how they were using that technology, their thing, to help empower pharma by building them in like a way to get direct to the patient. And I was like, that blew my mind then. And this was back in like, let's call it 2020, it would have been 2019 maybe. And I thought that it was just so interesting that pharma could go direct, because I didn't even know they could at that point. And now here we are, where it's like, this is going to be perhaps a groundbreaking way to commercialize drugs in the future, and bring them into markets where they might not have access in order to get them.
Let's talk about the patient for a minute and the role that they play here. We kicked off this conference with an amazing keynote by Sylvia Cerolini. Thank you.
I had to practice it, Jonah, to introduce her.
Who has this amazing story of becoming the advocate and just basically taking all the steps to make a necessary drug for her daughter happen. But the sad ending to the story is that the drug is still trapped in a freezer somewhere.
Yeah, it's trapped.
And the last mile isn't the science; it's the development and the economic incentives. But I feel like I heard from a lot of, there was a very nice blurring of the lines between, patient advocate and health innovator here at this conference. A lot of people, personally invested, fighting for their own health in a really positive way. So I don't know if you guys forget.
Yeah, actually, and I was going to say on our closing panel, which was our 10 by 10 panel, which featured like 9 people, really like just we have so many friends at Frontier Health who have along the way over the 10 years become thought leaders in this health innovation, digital health technology space. And so we collected a few of them and put them on stage with us and got their predictions for what's going to happen in the next 1 to 2 years, next 3 to 5 years, and then 5+. And there is definitely a strong contingent among those friends who were on the stage that the consumer is really going to be driving a lot of the change in healthcare, especially in the short term, in the next 1 to 2 years. So I think thinking about how already we're using ChatGPT and we're able to access open evidence, and there are all these tools online, and we're already tracking things with Apple Watches and Oura Rings and all the other things. And there's just this different sense of people being more active in the management of their health. I can't say globally, but I can say that there is definitely a more activated patient. Remember that term, Jonah, from way back when? The activated patient community, I feel like, has grown since we first heard mention of that term, like back 5, 6, 8 years ago. And it was like Dave DeBronkart and that group of people.
What happened is the Overton window on the quantified self has shifted so slowly we didn't even notice,
Yeah.
But now, like I was actually thinking the ubiquity of the Oura Ring at this conference has been kind of insane.
Oh my gosh.
It's like the new Fitbit for
it is
startup
the new
set.
Fitbit. Like I'm telling you, everything is old as new again. We're having the same conversations, but we've moved on, which is why I lately have been thinking, I'm like, we've been talking so much all these years about the digital transformation. And I'm like, it's not really a transformation. It's an evolution. It's like the digital evolution, because it's moving very slowly, but it's got a measured beat to it. And some of these old things that are not working are getting like, what is that? A survival of the fittest. And so they're getting like Darwined out here. And some of this other stuff is really moving forward. And then every once in a while, you have this crazy anomaly that just breaks the DNA of what we're doing. And that's how we're like moving along. It's more of an evolution.
And it's like, is it now time for ideas whose time had not come 5 years ago?
Right. That's true too.
So we're in a point of empowerment. And as you're saying, we're almost in this retro moment towards digital health, in that it is the moment for it. So empowered patients, and yes, going back to Sylvia and her daughter Vicky with Eye for Health, it's an investment issue yet, even though they have the medicine, as she was saying, in vials in a freezer ready to go, but you need that money element in order to put it into the hands of patients.
Well, to run clinical trials first and foremost.
Yeah.
But I thought there was an interesting lesson there, because in addition to trying to raise the money, they're also figuring out how to do the trials cheaper. And that motivation that the whole industry can use.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was at the moment, but there was someone who put it very well across. Why has this not happened? Money. Why has this not happened? Money. It does come down to money. But if we go back to the 10 by 10 panel at the end, and you were mentioning about the prevalence of the Oura Ring here at the conference, we have to be careful about digital health coming forward consumer-wise, and it got quite heated on that panel, if you remember, as opposed to healthcare-wise. And it was Monique Levy who said, biology is going to kick your ass. Maybe not in that term, but nearly.
No, she did say kick your ass.
She
did. Yeah, she did. I moderated that panel. She sure did say kick your ass.
It's all great to empower people with these wearables, with digital health in that respect. But when it comes to the healthcare side, to the pharmacological side, you have to have that evidence that is as yet the hurdle. So I very much, from other conferences, believe biology facilitated by AI is coming to the point of superhero power, butt-kicking time. But for now, the question perhaps sparked by that panel was, is it through the consumer market that we get to the pharmaceutical market and thereby have harmonization of the two.
Another way to word it, who's going to own our health? And at the end of this revolution, I think Ida Tin's question about like, do we really want these corporations to be where our healthcare lives was a good one.
I think that's an excellent question. I feel like we're on a spectrum, and I think that there's going to be that slow gradation of color, right, from one end to the other, and it's going to be kind of a blurred situation. And I think it's funny you asked that, Jonah, because it asked everybody for their prediction for the next 5 years plus, and I was like, nobody asked me because I'm moderating it, but I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, what would I predict would be the thing, and I was like, well, what would I most like to see? And it would be like finally getting to that patient ownership of their healthcare data, like the patient owned medical record. Because to your point, Jonah, it's like, who do we want owning this? Do we want it to be in the hands of a corporation? And if so, do you want to be able to pick which corporation owns it? Because I think somewhere along the line, whether you know it or not, as the patient, as the consumer, somebody's going to have a lot of your healthcare data. They already do, right? But they're going to have even more because we're going to be collecting even more. And the data collection is going to get better because that's been a top of conversation forever, is how bad healthcare data is and how it's unstructured and And we're working on that with ambient technology. So there's going to be even more healthcare data. There's going to be, I think, more of a fight for it. And it'll be locked up in a hospital system somewhere in an EMR, or it'll be in a platform that maybe you as a consumer choose, or maybe a pharma company will have a big chunk of it because you're going direct to disease with them. But somewhere along the way, there's going to be an aggregation of your health data. And as the person whose data that is, it's going to be interesting to know how you're making decisions about that. And if you're even able to choose.
Yeah, these notions of, you mentioned locked up somewhere and in a particular place. A word used a lot at this year's Frontiers Health has been unlocking.
Unlocked. Oh my God. That was the word of the conference.
Yes, exactly. So again, it's also another word used quite frequently was balance, certainly in the digital summit. Finding this balance between perhaps, as you say, Jessica, the locked part, where there's still some safety with our data and an ownership of our data, and the unlocking where we're not in silos and duplication and repetition across borders.
Yeah. And I think because healthcare is so complex, I mean, I'm okay with people seeing maybe my heart rate variability over a long period of time, but maybe I'm not so okay with everybody having access to the data about the cancerous tumor that I have, or maybe some other serious medical condition, or the longevity of my chronic conditions. You know what I mean? Like, I think that there's just there's not going to be a one size fits all answer.
I think in the US, this is important. There's a slightly different system with insurance reasons behind that.
Yep.
Okay, we should wrap soon, and so that we can go join the party.
Yes.
But I want to just take a minute, think of just the one most interesting thing you heard. It could be the most quotable quote, or the most, something that stuck with you over the last 2 days. I'll go first, so you guys can have a little time to think. And yeah, we'll go out on that. I know we only scratched the surface of this, and there's going to be lots more content on pharmaphorum. We may even do another podcast. But so I put this one on LinkedIn because it was such a good quote. It was in another session about the patient voice, and I should have found the name of this person. I want to give credit, but I'll throw it in later. So what she said was, we need to stop thinking of patient stories as inspiration and start thinking of them as information.
Oh, that's a good soundbite. Yeah. That's a great soundbite.
It was a great soundbite, but it was a great point too. I liked this panel because they really got into this notion of sort of like, it's not enough just that you have a patient panel. You really have to listen to them. And there's such a disconnect in the experience of patients and the sort of the sound bites of pharma, so it really got into this notion of like, what does it really look like to co-create with patients? And I thought that was really, really good.
I like that. So I liked this. This is going to be my new favorite buzzword. So it was Mike Ryan's panel, and he was talking to a group about how commercialization of pharma is changing. And it was Andrea from Menarini, whose last name I'm slipping on, but he used the term, he was talking about how, as we're looking at developing drugs and we're looking at the way that drugs are being commercialized, that the next big thing he predicts is not genomics, but human omics. And I thought that was a really cool phrase because I think that's applicable to a broad range of things. And so really talking about how we're bringing kind of humanity back into that process. So we're looking at like the very detailed molecular level, but like, what about the whole human and why the whole human? His example about not about patients not adhering to their medicine. Like, for example, he was talking about statins in that particular case, and how the statins are proven to work. The drug is great. The insurance company covers them if you're in the US, but still people won't adhere to that. And it's because they, as a human, don't want to admit that they're sick and that they're sick enough that there's something wrong, that they are needing a medicine that they have to take every day. And so his point about humanomics was bringing in like the reasons why people do the things they do when it comes to making healthcare decisions. And I think that in the age of AI here too, there's like a lesson to be extrapolated for that, right?
I heard that over and over again, that as we move further and further down the AI path, we are going to start to realize, by contrast, what is the most valuable about our humanity and start to kind of privilege that more. I think Eugene and Marina Brukovich, their talk was all about that from your coaching. And James Kugler on the AI panel also, he said some of the same thing in his closing thoughts. Like, this is going to drive us, like, when you don't know what you can believe on the internet anymore, it's going to drive you back into your communities.
100%.
Trust is. So that's a really interesting, I guess, theme to watch. What do you have, Nicole?
So I agree with both of you that AI will essentially let us know ourselves again, even deeper. But I perhaps want to leave it with the very fact that the World Health Organization has been here at Frontiers Health 10 with Modric Chibi. And what they're doing is they're opening a platform and inviting innovators to come to them so that they can address through digital health the unmet needs on a global public health scale. So for me, it's not a quote, but it is a standout action when we hear so many words that really embodies the ethos of what Frontiers Health is all about.
Does it embody it or unlock it, Nicole? Because you should use the terminology. Unlock. It unlocks the ethos.
Just as a closing note, the patient advocate whose name I couldn't remember was Patricia Ripoll. Sorry about that, Patricia, but good job. From Fondation Visible. And thank you both so much for this conversation. This was really fun.
Yeah, it was. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, and these folks piled into a tiny room to do a podcast while everyone else is having their end of conference celebratory drinks. So the dedication is much appreciated.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Jonah.
All right, and thank all of you for tuning in. Maybe next year you'll join us. That concludes another episode of the pharmaphorum podcast. You can find more information about this episode, including a download link and information about previous installments, at pharmaphorum.com/podcast. The pharmaphorum podcast is also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Podbean, and pretty much wherever else you download your podcasts. Just search for pharmaphorum and follow and hit subscribe. Of course, don't forget to visit the website itself, where you can sign up for daily and weekly news and analysis bulletins, and follow us on Blue Sky and LinkedIn at pharmaphorum. That's PharmaPhorum. That's all for now. Thanks for listening.